Okay, so you've learned some of the basics and become more familiar with your vehicle. Now for the most important lesson. It's a simple rule. Don't hit anything or anyone with your car. It might sound obvious, but think about it. If you can avoid hitting other objects and keep them from hitting you, you have all but eliminated being involved in a crash. Let me show you what I mean. Start your vehicle and take a right out of this parking lot. You may have heard other drivers who have been in a crash say, I didn't see it coming. Exactly, they didn't see it. That's why they got hit. The best way to see it coming is to constantly scan your surroundings. Scanning doesn't just mean looking around, it means searching for hazards in situations that could lead to a crash. It sounds simple, but there are some really effective ways of doing it. When scanning, follow this pattern. Look in front of you for things you have to react to immediately. Then further down the road for any upcoming hazards. Look to your left, also checking your left mirror. Then to your right. Finally, check your rear view mirror for any vehicles that might be coming up behind you. Okay, let's keep going. Scanning should be done continuously. You still focus most of your attention straight ahead, but rotate through all other areas every few seconds. You may need to think about scanning at first consciously, but after a while, it'll simply become a habit. Stop here, I want to show you something. Not all hazards are readily visible, but just because you can't see them, of course, doesn't mean they're not hazards or won't become one. Hazards can be blocked by other vehicles, sharp turns, even road signs. For instance, that bus to the right might be blocking a number of pedestrians. The truck to the left is hiding an emergency vehicle. And small objects like motorcycles and bicycles are easily hidden. Okay, let's keep going. become more experienced, you'll get better at identifying these hidden hazards. Okay, now that you know how to search for hazards, there's a technique that'll allow you to go one step further and actually predict hazards before they occur. Some objects might not look like hazards, but might display clues that they're about to become one. If you look carefully, you can spot some of these clues. Look ahead to your right. Notice the SUV with its wheels turned down and brake lights on? This may be an indication that the car is about to pull out. You can see that there's a driver in this truck, which means the door might open at any time. Just in case, you want to slow down and move slightly to the left. In some areas, you wouldn't expect to see a pedestrian, but the presence of a bus, emergency vehicle, or delivery vehicle might mean there's a pedestrian in the area and perhaps on the road. More often, pedestrians are being struck and killed because they were distracted. Right? Just like distracted drivers, pedestrians can be distracted by cell phones, texting, or reading. You should look at their behavior for clues about their awareness. There's another tool that's often overlooked, your hearing. You'll be surprised how much you rely on your hearing to know what's going on around you. For instance, you can often hear a car coming up beside you before you see it, or the sound of an emergency vehicle approaching in the distance. take advantage of all your senses. This street, for instance, is full of hazards you may hear long before you see. Go ahead and pull over in front of any of these houses. Then shut down your car. Continue using these scanning techniques throughout this course. Use both your eyes and your ears to help identify hazards. So you've learned how to identify hazards, some obvious, some not so obvious. You've even learned the first step towards anticipating hazards. But what happens when things don't go as planned? How can you prepare yourself for the unexpected? Well, let's get out of here and I'll show you. Take a left out of this exit. Stop here and look left before pulling out. Okay, you're clear to go because this car is turning into the gas station, right? Well, what if he doesn't turn and you decide to pull out? As I said, things don't always go as planned, and other drivers don't always make good decisions or obey traffic laws. Now it's safe to pull out. One way to prepare for the unexpected is to use a technique called what if. It means as you drive, constantly ask yourself, what if? For instance, what if this car on the left decides to pull out in front of us? What if this car decides to stop suddenly because the light turned yellow? What if this car pulls out in front of you? What if the kid decides to run across the street? Stuff like this happens all the time. Okay, here's a math quiz. If you're traveling at the posted speed limit, how close will you get to the kid before coming to a stop? The answer? You won't even have your foot on the brake when you hit him. Well, even if you were paying full attention to the road, it takes several seconds to recognize what's going on, determine if it's a hazard, decide on the appropriate response, and to move your foot from the accelerator to the brake. So, how do you give yourself more time to react? The obvious would be to stay alert and drive slower in busier areas. But there's another technique that can reduce your reaction time. It's called covering the brake. Here's how it works. When you approach a busy area, instead of keeping your foot over the gas, rest your foot gently on the brake pedal, but do not depress it. You're not actually slowing down, but you're ready to at any moment. This technique can give you a few moments more to react to a situation should it occur. Try it yourself. Scan for hazards and ask yourself, what if? Then cover the brake when appropriate. See how quickly you can respond to any situation. Okay, I think you got it. Pull over by any of these houses and shut down your vehicle. At first, you might have to make a conscious effort to think, what if? But as you get a little more experience, it'll happen more naturally. You'll have the chance to experience many types of intersections, each with their own set of rules. Let's start with the most common, the four-way stop. At these intersections, every vehicle has a stop sign. The question is, how do you know who gets to go first? The rule is simple. The first one to arrive gets to go first, then the second, then the third. It's important then to pay attention to the order in which the vehicles arrive and come to a stop. Looks like you're number 4. Let's get back in the car. When it's your turn to go, drive straight through the intersection. If you're ever unsure whose turn it is, it's safer and more courteous to let the other driver go first. Try to make eye contact with the other driver and use a hand gesture if possible. Then proceed slowly in case there was any miscommunication. Try this on your own. Pay attention to the order in which the other vehicles arrive, and proceed through the intersection when it's your turn. Okay, here's another intersection with very different rules. Notice the other vehicles don't have a stop, only you. In this case, you have to decide when it's safe to pull out. Make sure you use your turn signal to let other drivers know where you're headed. A very common crash occurs when you assume the vehicle in front of you has pulled out and you are still looking to the left. Signal lights are in a way easier because you have a light that tells you when to go. At many intersections, you can take a right when the signal light is still red. But whether the signal light is red or green, you should look both ways several times before pulling into the intersection. Remember, other drivers don't always obey traffic laws. It's good to leave at least one car length between you and the vehicle in front of you. That gives you room to move around the car if you have to. When the light turns green, you may be ready to take off, but it's safer to wait a few seconds before moving forward. You don't want to be the first one in the intersection if you can help it, because all it takes is for someone to try and beat the light, and Let's clear up this mess. Okay, let's keep going. Taking a left across traffic is tricky as you're intentionally crossing in front of other vehicles. Make sure oncoming traffic is going to stop before proceeding through the intersection, even if you have a green arrow. Roundabouts are unique intersections. They're designed so you don't have to stop, but you do have to yield to oncoming traffic, as those vehicles already in the roundabout have the right of way. Merge in when it's safe, and look for your exit. Not all intersections have signal lights or stop signs. For instance, this highway with its on-ramps and off-ramps is just like an intersection where other vehicles will be crossing your path or pulling into your lane. Just note you may need to stop for other vehicles even if you have the right of way. So depending on where you live, railroad crossings may be rare, but you must know what to do and what not to do. The most important thing is to take warning lights seriously. Even if you don't see a train, don't go around the gates or cross the tracks if the lights are flashing. Don't try to beat the train. Trains are moving way faster than they look, and they can't stop in time. And when it comes to a crash between you and a train, the train always wins. Wait until the gates are fully up and all warning lights stop before you cross. Even then, it's good to look both ways before crossing. Don't rely solely on the signal lights. Whatever you do, don't stop on the tracks, even if a train is not coming. If a car is in front of you, it's better to wait till he's out of the way so you don't get trapped if they suddenly stop. Pull over here and shut down the car. I know that it was a lot to learn, but you'll have more time to practice intersections. Bottom line, use caution at all intersections, look both ways, and use your turn signals. And don't assume other drivers will always obey the rules. So maintaining an adequate following distance is one of the most overlooked safe driving practices. The recommended following distance between you and the vehicle in front of you is 4 to 6 seconds, and that's in good weather. Add in wet roads, poor visibility, and other factors, and that recommended following distance can go up to 8 to 10 seconds. If that seems like a long way back, it is. Or at least it'll look like it is. Yeah, sure, you can tailgate someone, and as long as traffic keeps moving, no problem, but things can change suddenly. As I mentioned before, it takes longer to stop a vehicle than you might think. It takes approximately 1.5 seconds to recognize a hazard and begin pressing the brake. That's because in any given situation, the driver must first see the hazard, second, identify it as a risk, third, decide if braking is the correct response, and then finally move the foot from the gas to the brake. The 1.5 second response time assumes you are paying full attention to the road and not distracted, which can add several seconds to your response time. Keep this in mind, this is not how long it takes your vehicle to come to a stop. It's how long it takes before your foot touches the brake and the vehicle only begins to slow down. If you don't leave enough distance, you're actually in danger of being hit twice. Whether you hit the car in front of you or not, by stopping short, you're now in danger of being hit from behind. Leaving enough space for you to slow down also leaves enough time for the vehicle behind you to stop. Okay, now it's your turn. Let's get on the highway and practice maintaining a 4-second following distance. This might help until you get a feel for what 4 seconds looks like. If you find yourself too close to the vehicle in front of you, just back off slowly. Although you're doing your best to maintain a proper following distance, you won't always be able to control your distance, as other vehicles may merge in and out of your lane. What's important is that you're aware of your distance, and you're continuously and safely making adjustments to your speed. What you don't want to do is make abrupt changes in speed or drive too far below the posted speed limit. Alright, now try it without the graphic. So now, how do you know if you're maintaining a 4-second following distance? Well, one trick is to use roadside objects, such as a road sign, guardrail, or these black and yellow markers on the left. So find some marker well ahead of you. When you see the vehicle in front of you pass that marker, begin counting, and continue counting until your vehicle passes the same marker. This is a good estimate of how far you are from the vehicle in front of you. Go ahead and try it. Look at the vehicle in front of you. Wait until it passes some marker you choose, then count 1, 2, 3, 4, and stop counting when your car passes the same marker. If you're too close, adjust your distance, choose another marker, and then count again. You won't need to use this technique all the time, just when you need to check if you're far enough back. Also, this technique can be very useful, but don't ignore the other vehicles around you. Maintaining a proper following distance is just as important on surface streets as it is on the highway. You may be traveling at slower speeds, but you still need to maintain enough distance, as other vehicles are stopping and turning more often. I'll turn the graphic back on. Go ahead and pull into any of these parking spots and shut down the car. So maintaining space around your vehicle is closely related to maintaining a proper following distance, but in this case, it means maintaining space all around your vehicle, not just in front of you. For this lesson, I'll provide a graphic that will warn you when other vehicles are nearby. Alright, start your vehicle and pull out onto the road. Make sure to check your mirrors and use your turn signal before pulling out. In the previous lesson, you learned the importance of leaving enough space between you and the vehicle in front of you in case you have to stop suddenly. But coming to a stop may not always be the appropriate response. If the appropriate response is to steer around the vehicle, you'll need to make sure there's a safe space to move into, such as an adjacent lane. So how do you know if there's a safe space to move into? Well, the same method you use for identifying hazards, you'll also use to identify safe spaces. Use your scanning techniques, especially checking your mirrors, to identify spaces around your vehicle that are clear of traffic. Look left and right often to check if there's a car beside you, and position your vehicle so that those spaces remain clear. Don't weave in and out of traffic, just make subtle adjustments to your speed. Remember, you can't control the behavior of other drivers, but you can do your best to keep things clear around you and at least know when they're not. On the highway, it's the same thing. There's no telling when you might have to change lanes quickly, so make sure you always have a clear space around you.